All right, hello and welcome back to online English class. Today we're going to be using the screen record function to work through our content lecture, which is going to be about sound and sound devices in poetry. Okay, before we get into that, let's run through the top of the week announcements so that you can just be reminded of what you have to do throughout the course of this week. All right, so you've already accomplished your reading check. You guys did a good job of getting me that email confirmation of your reading yesterday. If you're in the AP course, you need to make sure that you are finishing the Unit 4 progress check. I would just once again encourage you to take that work seriously. It's good preparation for the kind of questions that are going to be asked to you on the AP Lit exam after the College Board's pivot to a shortened exam. You need to finish OTN 4 and 5 by the end of the week. We're going to be working through lectures 6 and 7 throughout the course of this week. Make sure you're keeping up with your reading, finishing your OTNs. Remember, if you're in the AP class, then one of the poems in OTN 4 need to be written in prose. All right, one of your poetic analysis for Dickinson's poems need to be written in prose. And finally, you need to make sure, just double checking, double tapping this, you need to make sure that you're finishing your Unit 4 progress check. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the content of the lecture today. I don't want to take up too much of your time just delivering this information. But I do want to explain it and do it justice. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our work. All right, so our first key idea is that excellent poetry uses the sounds of its word choices and syntactical structures, which is to say not just individual words, but also the phrases and clauses and the ways in which those words are put together grammatically to communicate meaning through its phonetic aesthetics or phonoaesthetics. All right, so phonoaesthetics is something that was talked about, a kind of concept that was talked about a lot by J.R.R. Tolkien and other critics. So that's just his phrase, his turn of phrase, phonoaesthetics. But basically what it means is it refers to the way in which a reader of poetry pays attention not only, okay, to what the words actually mean, and not only just to what those suggestive connotations are established by the collective meaning of those words and images or figures of speech, but also how meaning is connoted through the sound of the word as it is spoken or heard, okay? Through the way that the sound of the word communicates meaning or connotes meaning through it being spoken or heard, all right? So that's what we're talking about when we talk about phonetic aesthetics or phonoaesthetics. Okay, so poetry is a textual art. All right, let's look at the second point. Poetry is a textual art, so the sounds evoked by the poem are limited to the sounds of the words on the page. All right, which are silent until they are engaged with by the reader. Okay, so poetic sounds must be heard in the quiet of one's mind or aloud as the reader enunciates them, even as they are seen in the mind's eye. Okay, and so there's this sort of relationship between what the images evoked by the language of the poem mean, which you're supposed to engage with palpably, right? And also the way in which the poetic language connotes meaning through its music, through its rhythm, through its sonic aesthetics, through its phonoaesthetics or phonetic aesthetics, okay? So those things don't work against each other, and they don't work despite each other, and they don't work alternatively. They work in conjunction with one another, okay? So the sort of two broad categories of ways of describing the sounds in a poem are the sounds can be euphonic or harmonious. That just means generally good, or cacophonous. Another word for that might be dissonant, or very simply bad. All right, so for those of you that are familiar with music and have played music, you know that a sophisticated, good piece of music plays with two different major forms of sound. All right, it oftentimes will be harmonious and euphonic. It will resolve when it's supposed to resolve. All right, it will hit the key chord when it needs to hit the key chord. But sometimes, if you're listening to like a piece by Chopin or Beethoven, all right, you're going to find dissonance, right, in which the composer has intentionally, all right, written dissonant sounds, discordant chords into the melody of the song. Okay. A poet very similarly uses the tension between euphony and cacophony in the sounds of the poem. Okay. So basically, euphony is just the sounds of words working together with their meanings to produce pleasant effects to the mind and the ear. And cacophony are the sounds of words working together with their meanings to produce dissonant or discordant effects to mind and ear. Now, sometimes, teachers will go into all of this long list of the different consonants and vowel sounds that are euphonic sounding, and all of the cacophonous consonant sounds that are that can be used, like and instead of going into that, let me just give you a general principle. If a collection of words sounds harsh, like you threw a metal pan down a set of stairs in a closed hallway, all right, and it's echoing and it's banging and it's clanging and it's clashing down the steps, then it's probably intentionally cacophonous. Okay, if the words scrape, all right, through your ears, then it's probably cacophonous. All right, if the words sound like halcyon, if the words are soft, soothing, okay, if they babble like a brook, then they're probably euphonic, okay? So instead of getting into all these like minute details about various consonants and vowel sounds that are euphonic or cacophonous, let's just use that general principle, okay? If you hear something in your mind's ear, okay, in your ears, that sounds like a pan being thrown down metal stairs, then it probably is cacophonous, okay? So both, when correctly used, can produce beautiful pieces of poetic art as they develop and use this sort of tension between dissonance and consonants, or pleasant sounds and unpleasant sounds, okay? So some examples of that, we could find that in Love Calls Us to the Things of the World in the language before the volta and after the volta, right? So if you go back to the text of that poem really quickly, all right, you'll see language like, now they're rising together in calm swells of halcyon feeling, filling whatever they wear with the deep joy of their impersonal breathing. All right, so the repetition of the ing sounds and the repetition of the f sounds, all right, and the long a of calm, all right, and the long o. Sorry, that's actually, I think that's a short a. Gosh, I'm a little bit down on my phonetics, aren't I? I need to go back to kindergarten. And the short o's, okay, of halcyon, right? Those are nice. Rounded out sounds. They're beautiful, and the images that accompany them are also beautiful. Okay, they're calming, they're soothing, they're euphonic, which develops the sort of overarching tone of the images in which the speaker sort of takes comfort in this world as it should be. Okay, world as it was created to be. And then after the soul shrinks, we get this sort of cacophonous line from the soul shrinks from all that is about to remember, from the punctual rape of every blessed day. All right, that line sounds like a curse. Okay, punctual, that hard consonants, and rape, obviously a very ugly word with that sort of ugly APE sound, right? Ape, rape, of every blessed day. Again, this is these emphatic B sounds and the emphatic blessed day. It just sounds like a curse, right? So this is a cacophonous. This is euphonic, right? These two sonic devices juxtapose one another, and they do so in order to illustrate the two different tones before and after the volta. So it's pretty simple, right? That's pretty clear and straightforward. Okay. We also see that in this line from Roth: the hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle, and every step you missed, my right ear scraped a buckle. Okay, so those harsh consonant sounds, obviously, they work in correspondence with the image, okay, in order to illustrate and evoke the significance of that line. All right, we could also look at this quotation from William Blake, but we'll skip it for now. Okay, we've got the repeated I sound. We'll skip it for now and move on. All right, key idea number 3. Poets use a device called onomatopoeia, in which the sound of a word mimics its meaning. Okay, this device helps inject a word's denotation with sounds that manifest its meaning, making the description more concrete, more precise, and perhaps a better way of saying it would be more palpable. Okay, it's the difference between calling Klay Thompson and Steph Curry the excellent 3-point shooting brothers, or calling them the Splash Brothers, right? So that splash is an onomatopoeia that just helps manifest the sound, right, of a leather ball going through a nylon net and making the splash sound, right? It's a nice sound if you're a basketball player, right? The word dizzy here is an onomatopoeia. The word buzz here is an onomatopoeia. They both use this sort of repeated Z sound, this Z, right? Dizzy is a word that even as you say it is sort of is slurred. It's a slurred word, dizzy. And obviously, it sort of helps manifest or make palpable the dizzying effect of the small boy being held so close to his father with whiskey all over his breath, and the larger, obviously, metaphorical dizzying effect of having such a complex relationship with a father that you love, but also is violent toward you. Okay, right? So, again, without getting back into a reading of the poem as a whole, let's just understand that these examples of onomatopoeia are sonic devices or sound devices used by the poem to help manifest the meaning. Okay, so this is another way that we describe phonetic aesthetics or phonoaesthetics. Okay, a couple more key ideas, right? Two more prominent sound devices: alliteration and assonance. Okay, so you probably have heard of these things before. They're used oftentimes to help develop euphonic and cacophonous sounds. Okay, so alliteration is the repetition of similar consonant sounds, both initially, so at the beginning of a word, and internally, so in the middle of a word. And assonance is a repetition of vowel sounds, both initially and internally. Okay, so remember the repeated use of the S sound in "This Is Just to Say," which again emphasizes and alludes to the sort of hissing of a snake, which draws our mind back to and references the fall of man in the story of the Garden of Eden, okay, in which Adam and Eve both sort of offer equivocal apologies to their maker, God, for their selfish action, for their indulgence in a kind of forbidden fruit. Okay, so again, without getting back into a more fleshed out reading of that poem, just understand that that repeated alliterative S sound, okay, is a sonic device that is used intentionally by Williams through the speaker in order to develop his theme. Okay, so that's, again, phonetic aesthetics, right? We understand the connotations of the sound, the repeated meaning, or the meaning of that repeated sound, okay? Similarly, we see it in Blake's quotation here of "Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" Okay, so the assonant use of the I sound, the tiger, which is burning bright in the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame their fearful symmetry? That repeated I sound there just adds emphasis and draws attention to these very important images of the tiger, which is the focal point of the poem, burning bright in the forest of the night. Okay, so if you remember, you might not remember this poem at all, but basically the tiger here is a central symbol. Okay, the emphatic alliterative repetition of tiger and burning and bright. There, along with the trochaic meter, tiger, tiger, which is a sort of front-footed, aggressive meter. It just basically adds emphasis to and develops a mood in the poem of aggression, of violence, um, and also begins the process of characterizing the tiger as a symbol of the sublimity of the universe and the sublimity of that universe's creator. Okay, so again, without getting into a reading of the poem as a whole, just want you to see how these phonetic devices, how these sonic devices are used in order to develop meaning, add emphasis, and draw the reader's attention to certain important elements of the poem. Okay, so finally, let's talk quickly about rhyme. Rhyme adds musicality to spoken language. Okay, rhymed sounds develop meaning by striking a balance between repetition and variation. That is the mark of almost all the things that entertain humans. It's really weird, okay? If you start thinking about it, human beings are really entertained by and delighted by this sort of delicate balance between repetition of similar kinds of things and variation from within those repeated structures, okay? It's the way rhyme works. It's the way that watching basketball over and over again through the years works. Same game, same rules. Different outcome, different players. It's how beauty standards typically work for human beings. All right, if you have a symmetrical face that reminds you of the way that most human beings look, all right, but has very small variations, very small differentiations from that, enough to make your face look interesting. You typically are something called good looking in many cultures, okay? So anyways, it's just a weird little thing about aesthetics, and rhyme works the same way, okay? So rhyme is two words or phrases that contain an identical or similar vowel sound and a similar consonant sound, okay? So an exact rhyme is a vowel sound that is exactly the same. Okay, a lot of times exact rhyme is used to cultivate close comparisons or connections or relationships between the concepts or lines that end with that exact rhyme or feature that exact rhyme. Think about the use of exact rhyme for foe and doe. In my life, it stood a loaded gun. Okay, slant rhyme are vowel sounds that are not exactly the same, but very, very close. And many times the consonant sounds are close too. So you could think about various uses of slant rhyme in Emily Dickinson's poems that we've looked at. There's an example of slant rhyme to come from the famous Beatles song, Hey Jude. All right, and then finally, in rhyme and internal rhyme refers to the location of different rhymes. Internal rhyme is rhyme within a line, okay? So if you got if there are any Eminem fans out here, he's the master of internal rhyme, okay? So in rhyme is just a line or a line of poetry that ends with a word, and then another line of poetry that ends with the same word. It's end rhyme. Internal rhyme repeats sounds within lines, okay? So you could consider the end rhyme used in My Papa's Waltz, which, again, he plays with both exact rhymes and slant rhymes, okay, in order to illustrate the sort of structure that a waltz is supposed to have, the structure that a childhood is supposed to have, that a parent is supposed to give to their child, the structure, consistency, order, rule that a good father, is supposed to give his son, but that in rhyme is constantly not quite resolving itself correctly. It's a little bit out of step. It's a little bit out of tune. All right, so that use of in rhyme there is a great example of phonetic aesthetics or phonoaesthetics, right? It's using the sounds, it's using the rhyme scheme to communicate its meaning. All right, you could also consider Dickinson's use of slant rhyme in Much Madness's Divinest Sense, which we talked about yesterday. You could consider the internal rhyme in Hey Jude. Don't make it bad. Take a sad song. There's an internal rhyme between the word bad and sad, and make it better. Remember to letter, okay, better and letter rhyme. Then you can start to make it better. Hey Jude, don't be afraid. You were made, okay, afraid and made. Internal rhyme to go out and get her. The minute you let her, all right, get her, let her under your skin, then you begin to make it better. Okay, so in modern poetry, just the last thought I want to leave you with is normally, all right, rhyme in just like roses are red, violets are blue, blah, blah, that kind of. It's just decorative. It's just kind of like it rings nicely. It's versy. Okay, but in most contemplative forms of poetry and serious poetry, rhyme is more than just decoration. It's more than just music, although it is. It's musical. It's nice. Okay, it's fun to rhyme. It's just nice. Humans like it for some reason. Okay, people like rap. Primary feature of rap is rhymes. Okay, rhythmic language that rhymes. Okay, but in poetry, right, rhyme is used to communicate meaning. It's used to add emphasis to certain concepts. It's used to imply or connote or suggest meanings, relationships, and develop impressions, tones, and moods. Okay, so just remember that. That's the general principle here that the AP course wants you to get, and the general principle that I want you to get is that sound in poetry is more than just decoration. It can be used. It's aesthetics. It sounds. The way the words sound is meant to develop meaning. All right. Have a great day, you guys.